Start off a little simple. A Real Pain is it's a comedy about some pretty heavy subjects. What's the key to making difficult topics funny?
I don't know that I'm an expert in making difficult topics funny. But I am, but I do feel very comfortable writing very specific characters and setting them against the backdrop of some serious things. And so for me, like the kind of trick is, can you write characters that are so specific and lived in and authentic and real feeling that you can put them in any situation, even if the situation is quite dramatic, like the situations that these characters are going through in this movie, and it'll still feel like fun and accessible and warm because you're seeing it through the eyes of these people.
One of the themes that stuck out the most to me in A Real Pain is this question about how are people supposed to remember or mourn the Holocaust, or really just painful things altogether. From your experience preparing for this film and then making it, what kind of lessons have you learned about ways that people should learn about, remember, mourn the Holocaust, and I guess really all of our ancestors?
The way I think of it is probably best summed up with a story that happened to me when I was working in Poland. There was a picture on Instagram that went viral, which was a picture of a girl visiting Auschwitz-Birkenau, and she was lying on the train tracks in a kind of sultry position. And she had put this picture of herself online, and people on the set were very angry. How could this person disrespect the history by lounging on it like she's in Cancun? And I remember just thinking, it was amazing that this girl was there at all. Like, this girl could have visited Daytona or Paris or any other kind of more fun trip. And yet this girl who's not necessarily wired to be this, very mournful person showed up at Auschwitz. And that's pretty remarkable. And so my feeling in terms of, Holocaust tourism or trauma tourism is that it's just great to, it's, I just, I think it's great that people do it, and people are curious about exploring the pain that people are comfortable exploring painful history. It's quite an effort to make to get to Auschwitz. It's not easy. And I just have a great amount of respect for anybody who goes there. Really, and it's wonderful if they behave appropriately, but sometimes they don't, and then they learn, and then it's okay, But I mean, I visited the killing fields in Cambodia and the Rwandan Genocide Museum in Kigali, and I like exploring this kind of history because it brings me closer to, what really is happening in the world and the pain that people are experiencing.
You, having experienced some of these places and things yourself, do you have, I mean, tips essentially for how best people can go into these kind of experiences without, because the movie's very much about everyone has a different reaction and experience to these. Is there a way to help yourself have these experiences without assumptions or without uh, thinking you're going to react in some way or another?
That's so nice of you to ask, and I would say that, yeah, absolutely. And it's the same in the same spirit. I tried to make a movie about the Holocaust that was not that didn't feel like it was punishing the audience, or teaching the audience, or showing the audience how noble it was by its very existence of being a movie about the Holocaust. I wanted to kind of make a Holocaust themed movie that to me felt accessible and inviting and realistic to my life experience. And similar, to answer your question, I hope that people explore painful history without punishing themselves if they don't feel the things that they're hoping to feel or expecting to feel. It can be quite normal to go to a place like a concentration camp and actually feel numb. That is quite a common reaction I've heard. Feeling numb, people shouldn't punish themselves for not breaking down in tears, and rubbing the dirt on their face. It's all of these reactions are normal, and the only bad thing to do is to ignore painful history. Yeah, the only bad thing is to just ignore painful history because it makes you uncomfortable.
Having experienced similarly, I appreciate and agree for sure. Something a little niche to New York specifically that I latched onto in this movie is because I lived there for 5 years, is that Kieran Culkin's character Benji lives in Binghamton, New York, which is like a small upstate town with an aging and dwindling Jewish population. Your character, David, lives in New York City, a bustling metropolis full of all kinds of Jews. What can the difference between where these characters live and how they live there what can that say about the ways that different people deal with different pain?
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, it's funny. I mean, I guess in terms of like the Binghamton of it all, it was basically just, Kieran's character is somebody who just has trouble kind of living a mainstream lifestyle. And yeah, it just seemed to me that this character would probably move somewhere a little lower key. And David's character, who I play, is kind of a yuppie who able to make it in New York on the salary of somebody who sells ad banners and is able to have a, dual income household with a child. And it just seemed right for these characters. In terms of how different people deal with pain, my character is a very modern creation, which is somebody who has like kind of general anxiety disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder and medicates it away. And so he's able to live a kind of functioning life, although he has, discomfort all the time. And somebody who's dealing with a lot, demons that are quite a lot darker. Um, uh, but what I was trying to show was that these characters are dealing with their pain in different ways, but against the backdrop of the Holocaust, their pain is not that different. Against the backdrop of traumatic, objective, historical horrors. They're just two individuals kind of navigating their lives. And so I wanted to ask the audience, and that's what the title is, real pain. What is real pain? Is David's pain real, even though he can take an obsessive compulsive disorder medication? Is Benji's pain real, even though it's much more serious than David's? Or are none of their pain real because it's against the backdrop of historical trauma?
Right. One of the like silly pieces of pain that I was getting out of the movie is the moment where Benji says, "I'm going to take a train back upstate," and there is no train to Binghamton. And I'm like, what does this mean? And why, like, their whole relationship between the two of them and trains is throughout this movie. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, whether it's about trains specifically or just overall, like, what, just say a little more, like, what does it mean for these two people to have the same experience together, but clearly be on somewhat different journeys?
Well, so they're cousins in the movie, which is quite different than siblings or friends. So with cousins, the thing you share is grandparents. And in this movie, it's presented that their grandmother just died. And so these two guys who have kind of grown apart are now on this trip together, and the person that linked them is no longer there. And so in a way, they really don't have a concrete reason to stay together in their lives and to be, best friends in their lives because their grandma's gone. And so there's this kind of bittersweet, almost tragic ending where, I'm trying to get my cousin to come over for dinner, but he wants to take his train upstate but before that he wants to sit at the airport for a while because that's a place he feels most comfortable because people for whom the world is overwhelming sometimes really excel with transient relationships. They could be great one-on-one for 5 minutes, but can't sustain a kind of adult relationship, which is kind of Kieran's character. And so in a way, I was trying to kind of like, yeah, just show the distance, both geographical and emotional, that the two characters have found themselves in.
Well, the movie's fantastic. Thanks for the
Oh, it
time.
was nice to
I'll
finally meet you.
say hello to East Brunswick for you when I'm
Please
home for
do.
Thanksgiving next week.
Kiss the
And my
ground.
own
Thank you.
cousin, Jesse Eisenberg, who's
Yeah.
so
Thank you so much. You're
thanks.
so kind.
Be
Thanks, Jason.
be well.
You too.